This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so the point about this is really not so much for me to sort of give a lecture. Oh, here we've got somebody else come, that's good. The point about this really is what I'd like to do is I picked on vacuum cleaner simply because I've had quite a few clients with dogs that are scared of vacuum cleaner, but we could say hairdryer, you could say all sorts of things. I'm not in this particular session, we're not really talking about fear of people and fear of dogs. There's so many fears. We're talking about fear of a household item or maybe several household items, and really what we can do about it. Hi, Avril. Can you hear us? Okay, you haven't perhaps got your volume on. Anyway, so what I thought I'd do to begin with, for the sake of the recording really, we'll have a little sort of look at just the issue in general, and then I thought what I would do is ask each one of you what it is, probably the vacuum cleaner, because that's what I did to start with, but what it is that your dog is frightened of. It might be a hairdryer, it might be something else, and tell us just a little bit about what your dog does and what you're doing about it, okay? And in fact, I think that might be quite a good place to start, and I think we'll start with you, Joanne, because you know me and make it easy. So just a little bit, let's do it, just a little bit, say what the breed of your dog is, the age of your dog is, and what the dog is scared of, and how the dog reacts and how you react to the dog.
Right. I've got two dogs, both rescues, a mum and daughter from last September. The mum is scared of the Hoover, definitely, and she just cowers. So what I've been trying to do is put food on the Hoover, leave the Hoover, but not on in the room, so that she just walks past and gets used to it. When I'm using it, I make sure that all the doors are open, so if she wants to get out and find a safe space, she can. She doesn't tend to bark at it, she just really gets slinky and what I call like a flat Labrador type posture. Her daughter is getting used to it now, Ginny. She's 17 months, her mum's 3.5 years old. And Ginny will now lie down furthest point in the room to the Hoover, but she doesn't bark at it, and she's not particularly worried now. So I think
when you think about it, a dog has absolutely no concept of clean floors. I mean, a dog has absolutely no idea what this thing is, and they tend to hate things like snakes with hoses. That's another thing they don't like. And then, and also the noise. What must it sound like to a dog? It must sound like something growling, mustn't it? So everything about a vacuum cleaner, and both my dogs I wouldn't say aren't happy. I could make them happy if I took the time. But my Labrador, a little bit, he doesn't slink, but she sort of keeps an eye on it, follows around. And Pickle, if it's something moving, anything moving gets him excited. Yes, yeah, that's interesting. Right. So what about, are you there, Jill? Oh, yes, you're a dark shadow.
Yes, I'm here.
Share yours with us.
Mine is Purdy. She's 15, well, she'll be 16 weeks tomorrow, English Bulldog puppy. I have used put the vacuum, as Joanne did, in the room, put food around it, just left it in the room, and she's fine. I think it's the movement more than anything. And there was one day she was fine about it, but yesterday she was, I was through the gate in the other room and vacuuming, and she was barking like mad. So I started throwing treats, and she was fine with that.
Was she barking, do you think, because she wanted to get to you, because you'd shut it behind a gate, or because she was scared of the vacuum cleaner, or excited with it?
I don't think it's scared. I think, well, it could be a little bit scared, but it's more excitement, I suppose.
Yes, I think often it is excitement, isn't it? It's reactivity in some way, isn't it?
Yeah. But when I started throwing the food, she was fine. What about the vacuum? Yeah. So I think it is more excitement than fear.
Yes.
But my French Zigzag, I can vacuum right up to him. He's so chilled, he's fine. He'll just lay there.
Some of them really okay if you even vacuum the dog, aren't they? I mean, you can vacuum. My German Shepherd lay there and let you vacuum her.
Yeah.
Good thing, long haired. Marilyn, Okay, would you like to just tell us a little bit about the dog and sort of what is the dog's reaction, and then what's your reaction?
Hi, everybody. I actually don't, this is my first time joining in one of your groups, and I'm just so interested in hearing what everyone has to say. So I do have something interesting though to share with everybody about a dog reacting. It isn't exactly a household appliance, but this happened to a client's dog, because I also help people with their dogs. And this was a dog that was adopted from the shelter. And when she walked the dog in the neighborhood, the dog just totally lost it, lunging and barking and pulling on the leash when a mail truck went by.
Only mail truck.
Only a mail truck at first. So we thought at first, what is it about the mail truck? Is it like the sound of the engine? Is it that it looks, we just kind of struggled. And I think one of the lessons is that we really don't know what's going on inside a dog's head and what is it. I mean, we can guess,
Yes.
but process, even though this isn't exactly a household appliance, it still kind of, I think, fits.
Well, it's an
into
everyday thing, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Fits into
Yeah.
the category. So after a lot of experimenting, and she took videos and we discussed it a lot on Zoom calls like this, we finally worked out that it wasn't the truck, and because sometimes it generalized into like, if the street was quiet and then a car came around the corner, the dog would get all excited. So what we finally surmised was that it wasn't the truck or the car, or sometimes it was even a person. It wasn't that, it was the contrast. And the dog could not, because of the dog's background, which we don't know much about, because the dog was rescued from the shelter. So we really don't know that much about the dog's early history, but the dog just couldn't accommodate a sudden change.
Yes, I think sudden has a lot to blame for a lot of things, hasn't it?
Yeah.
The whole thing. I mean, a dog that
Sudden
lives,
change.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I wonder if that might be part of what's going on with
It
the
might
vacuum
be.
cleaner
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all of these other
yeah,
things. I mean,
yeah.
it's just another way to kind of
Exactly.
view it.
Well,
And
I've
think,
been to dogs that when I live in London, and they go and there's lots of things happening, noises, people all over the place, and they absolutely accept the whole thing. Then they come and live near me and out in the country, give them a few months, and they start jumping at every little thing, because it's suddenly out of. And I think it's the same if, say, I often think dogs that go into a park, say, with your dog show, and there's loads of dogs, loads of people, they're fine. But you go somewhere and there's just one person and a dog, they react, don't they? And it's a bit like us. If we're in a park full of people, we feel invisible. But if there's just one man there, we'd perhaps feel quite exposed, wouldn't we? And it's a sort of thing. Sort of going back to trying to find some sort of something, a way of actually coping with the specific fear of a thing. And so let's look at the general principle, okay? So we're talking really about desensitizing, even though that in a way you might think the animal hasn't been sensitized, it just doesn't like it. And counter conditioning, which basically means change how the dog feels about whatever the thing is. And people don't seem to realize, I'm sure you do, because I know you, how long this takes. And I think for the purpose of this, it's really about looking at this ladder, because if there is something, say the dog is really frightened of the vacuum cleaner, your ladder, you have to start on the floor. Now, what even I think with is it you, Jill? Yes, who leaves the door open and the rest of it. You're already up to step 2 or step 3 of the ladder. You're not started on the floor, if you see. I think we've got to find the place where that item, the dog's aware of the item, but totally comfortable with it. before you can do anything else. And you can't climb to the next step until, and then you need to be ready to go back down again. And it can take an awful long time. I mean, it makes me think of when my son, that is back in about 1980, he was 12 years old. Something had happened when he was a very small child and he was absolutely terrified of the dark. It got so bad that he couldn't go on house school camps and things because he was too scared of the dark. And so that he went to a psychiatrist. Now, in those days, people weren't very handy about giving out drugs, and he didn't have drugs, so I'm sure he would have done now to help him. So he had a course. It took 6 months of getting him over his fear of the dark. And at no time was he shut in a dark room. At no time was he put anywhere without the switch in his hand. So the whole thing about it was he must have as much light as he likes and have control over the darkness. And then he also needed mental things to help him, motivate him to sort of try a bit of darkness. But of course, we can't go quite that with a dog. But if people start looking at, if that was a human with a total phobia, you'd accept that it might take 6 months, wouldn't you? But with a dog, people don't accept that it's going to take 6 months. They think it's going to, and sometimes it's something a lot more inconvenient than the vacuum cleaner. It's a bit like the mail van. You know, so what I would say is, if your dog is really scared as you do the vacuum cleaning and you leaving the door open so the dog escapes, that's great. But I don't think it's going to alter how the dog feels about the vacuum cleaner too much. How I would probably do that is I think it was Jill saying, you have the vacuum cleaner, you leave the vacuum cleaner about, the vacuum cleaner is static. Often the dog suddenly discovers, oh, there's food on this vacuum cleaner. Well, this is a nice thing, there's food on it. Okay, so the first thing would be to get the dog used to the static machine, and everybody's thing's going to be different. Now, I'd also think if it's a vacuum cleaner with a hose, I think you start by taking the vacuum cleaner apart and you do it in separate bits and introduce the hose bit later, so that the smell and everything of the solid bit, there's nothing really too bad with that. You know what I mean? Then once the dog is really, really happy with that, then you're ready for the next step, probably about step 4 now. Next step is to add movement, isn't it, Jill? It's the movement. You start moving. Okay, so no, actually, I think perhaps the next step before that is for you to be actually touching the stationary vacuum cleaner with the food on the rest of it, holding it and doing nothing and just standing still, dropping food. To the extent that if you go near the vacuum cleaner and touch it, the dog thinks, oh, good, I like this. I'm coming over for food. I like this thing. And then I would say start very slowly moving 1 inch, 2 inches, and throw food and see what happens. And be ready to stop again if there's any problem at all. And I think then it's got to be done very, very slowly. And you've got to be sort of can move around almost anywhere with a happy dog following this nice game, but the thing not even switched on. Then you're back to adding the volume to it. So I think you'd probably go back to step 1 almost, where the thing is still, maybe in bits, and just turn it on. And maybe turn it on in another room, so that the door's shut between you, the dog, and the thing, and you're with the dog. You get somebody else to turn it on in another room, so the dog hears the noise in another room, well away, and food starts raining about the place. I think you just have to sort of break it down into what happens for your own dog. But I think it's going to be a long, long journey before the dog is in the same room as a moving vacuum cleaner that's turned on. So I would say it has to be broken down to the vacuum cleaner in bits, the vacuum cleaner stationary, you buy the vacuum cleaner, and then the vacuum cleaner moving around, and then the noise of the vacuum cleaner from another room, and then maybe the door open. You know, it's a very, very slow process. I don't know, has anyone got anything to add to that? It's not always easy, is it?
So Theo, yeah, you know, that I was just really struck by the description of your son and the process of having him get over his fear of the dark. And I think one thing you said really applies to our dogs, and that is that he always had control.
Yes.
Over what was going on. He was never forced into a dark room. And I think giving the dogs the freedom to walk away if they feel overwhelmed, I think is a really major piece.
Other
of
problem with that, though, is the dogs don't seem to be able to resist going near the thing that is scaring them. They don't trust it enough to leave it alone and go. Some dogs just have to stay and watch it. So I mean, before they get to the thing where they can see it, it's best if they could possibly be happy with it first, if you see.
Yeah,
But it's never trapped in the room. Yeah.
if they're feeling, if they feel a little overwhelmed, maybe if they're not ready to go away from it, because I always feel like distance from the trigger, whatever is scaring the dog, is a really major piece of helping them get over it. And if they can't get that distance themselves because they're just like watching that monster that it doesn't eat them up, then maybe we have to help them get the distance, or give them some kind of an exit ramp so that they have that same kind of control, that they don't feel like they have to stay there if it's like overwhelming them. And I have background noise here, sorry. The dog is playing with the cat. So yeah, it's all in fun. So yeah, so that was the one piece that I thought was, an important thought, something to add.
Yes, distance is a great thing, but it's not only distance, is it? It's distance or intensity. It is
right
at a level that they can handle it. And it's easy to talk in like, just for me to say this, that, and the other, but when you've got your own home, your own situation, your own layout, and all the other stuff, and your own dog, it's not easy just to fit into a pattern. You just have to make the pattern to fit the dog, really. I mean, I have a lot of people's dogs are really scared of hair dryers. And, then they get the people who think, well, I'm going to get my dog over this by turning it on the dog, But there, I would say it's exactly the same thing, really. It needs to be a stationary hairdryer, not held, left about, food on it, picked up, used as part of a game, maybe turned on when the dog's a long way away, and with a good escape route. And yes, and if it's paired with something the dog likes, I think that's what counter conditioning really is, isn't it, Marilyn? It's like, if you get the distance or intensity from the thing, and then let that thing trigger good stuff. So if the vacuum cleaner triggered sprats, say, and no other time did the dog get sprats, then I think the dog might think, oh, the vacuum cleaner's coming out, that means sprats. And so, maybe that would help. Any other sort of anything else from people who have got the dogs and the things that you'd like to add, or could ask, or whatever, Jill and Joanne?
Can I just ask something? It's a similar thing, a similar problem, and I really don't know. I understand what you're saying about the vacuum cleaner and things, and probably it will work. It's the lawnmower.
Oh, another one. Yes.
Again, Luna the mum will just stay indoors. So she'll keep out of the way, but Ginny attacks it. So I've had to bring her indoors.
Dogs attack lawnmowers. When you think about it, if you imagine you're a dog and there is this monster, and you're low down at the lawnmower level, and there is this monster very much like on legs, spewing out stuff, making a horrible noise. It must be really intimidating, mustn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people can't even shut the dog in the house because the dog can hear it from the house.
Yeah. I do put her in the house, but
can you put her somewhere else in the house, further away to the front of the house, so?
We could put her in the front room.
And give her a bone or something to keep her busy, so she begins to think, oh, when I hear that distant lawnmower sound, I get a bone. Then after a while, you might actually be able to leave the door open and give her the bone, and she might start associating. I don't mean the door into the garden, I mean the door into the back of the house. And she can escape from the back of the house, like Marilyn says, escape and put space between her, but they start associating the lawnmower with a bone. I don't know, do the dogs get on if you both have a bone?
Oh yeah, Yeah, they're brilliant that way.
So you give them both a bone,
Yeah.
keep them busy.
Mhm.
I mean, that
Okay.
might do it. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
but I think the trouble is, if you're on one, if you get on this ladder, and then all of a sudden you decide to get off it in the middle, say, so what do? You go and you think, oh, well, I'm going to let the dogs in the garden this time. You undo all the trust you've built up. So
Yeah.
and same with the vacuum cleaner. So once you start, it's really important not to break it. Bit like separation problems when you start going for a tiny length of time, whatever you build up, and then you suddenly go up for 2 hours, you've sort of undone the trust you've built up.
So what would happen, say, just going with the lawnmower, I'm probably daft here. We're not near winter, but we're coming up to winter when we wouldn't be using it. Would we have to start again in the spring?
That's a good one. Maybe you take it, you could go and start, is it electric, by the way?
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you sort of occasionally just topping up the thing, going and turning it on, is there, outside and giving a bone every now and then? 2 or 3
suppose so.
times during the winter. Or when spring comes, go back to step 1.
Yeah.
Go right back to step 1 and you probably find you retrace your footsteps very quickly.
Right.
That would
Okay.
perhaps be the thing to do, wouldn't it? I don't know what you'd do, Marilyn. Would you do that? You're muted.
Yes. Yes, I think, as you said before, you need to always be ready to go back
Yes.
if the dog is showing any discomfort. So, gradually just keeping that whatever stage you've reached with that desensitizing or that counter conditioning process. If you don't use it for a while, there's a chance that the dog might default back to the way
That's
he was
right. Sometimes it's
before.
been, yeah. If the dog has really got over the fear, really got over it, like my son got over the fear of the dark, then it's almost like that fear's gone. Even in 2 years' time, and even in the dark, he'd be okay, if you
Mhm.
like. So I think it might depend whether the fear is actually totally gone. And I imagine in a lot of cases, my most recent experience with real fear was, I live in an old house with very thick walls and doors. And my downstairs toilet is a very small room with no windows, no nothing. And the door handle came off when I was in there. There was nobody in the house, just 5 dogs the other side of the door. I couldn't get out. And I have terrible claustrophobia. And I went into a total panic. And in the end, after a lot of effort, I managed to kick a hole in the door and then put my hand up and open it from the outside. But I was, even talking about it makes me feel breathless now.
Yeah.
And I think of how many dogs must be in a total panic in the situation. That's how it feels, just awful.
I'm also claustrophobic,
Are you?
Thea.
Yeah.
So I can, oh my gosh. I
It was
can
the
just
most awful
imagine.
thing.
Oh,
Well,
somehow
I can
you would
understand it as
get
well.
the adrenaline strength to
I know.
knock that door down. Oh my gosh.
That was just dreadful.
Oh
That
dear.
must be like common fear, actually, because I've got the same. If I go into any public toilets, I have to check that I can unlock it
All right.
before that. I have a fear of getting stuck in a small space like that.
It's I imagine you can imagine how some dogs feel in crates.
Yeah.
I'm sure a
They
lot of dogs that are in crates, they're more worried about, they feel claustrophobic rather than anything.
Yeah. I often wondered why people think crates are necessarily, dogs think they're safe in them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No. I mean, they're very useful. I think it's not a bad idea to have a dog reasonably happy, because when they go to the vet, they've got to go in a crate. So, there are times when they don't want to be totally terrified of it. And there is puppies sometimes, I think a pen is probably the best idea. I don't like the idea of shutting things in cages. Mind you, my Cocker Spaniel has a crate under my desk. He hardly ever is shut, but it's sort of like a place. If I have to get rid of him for a minute, I could shut him in there. I mean, if he'd been barking at me now, thinking I was talking to him, I'd have said, "Come on, under there, good boy," and shut the door on him. And he'd have been quite happy. He loves to go in there. But I do agree, crate training, it's almost about people feel this is a necessary step in training their puppy. It has to be crate trained. And I think it just doesn't suit all dogs personally. But, you know, if you want to go out and you've got a puppy and it's going to wreck the house and kill itself, you know, what you've got to do, I think. And I've been also, my puppy, Pickle, he's now a Cocker Spaniel, he's 12 years old now, but you wouldn't think so. I had a puppy pen for him, and the first thing he did was climb out. And also when trying, he once got his paw stuck in the thing as well, you know.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of, again, crate training, I think a lot of that's about fear rather than anything else. You know, the thing is, it's like you said, Marion, you know, dogs need an escape route. They need to have some control. And in a crate, you've taken it all away, haven't you?
Mhm. Well, when I think the way you introduce the dog to the crate in the beginning, I think will help a lot. So, you know, I tell people, just have the crate there and leave the door open and let the dog freely go in and out and in and out.
Mm.
And then little by little, as they're comfortable, you can start to close them in. But I think before you close them in, they have to willingly go in on their own.
This is the
Without-
ladder, isn't it? You're starting at the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah. Mhm.
Starting on the floor.
Yeah.
with the crate.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you know, my dogs are all used to going in the crate, and they'll go in. I'll just tell them, get in the kennel, and they'll go in and they'll be happy to go in and they're comfortable, but it's not like they're panicky and trying to escape and feeling claustrophobic.
Well, I've done exactly the same as you, and I've never had a dog that all mine have been totally happy to go in a crate, but I'd never shut them in crying. And I never had them in at night time. I've always had them in my bed at night. Anyway.
Sometimes I have to shut them in, you know, like if I don't want this one to eat that one's dinner,
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
you know.
You need
but,
them when you've got more than one dog. Really, you do need ways of separating them sometimes, don't you?
Yeah.
Don't you find
Yeah.
that, Joanne, that you need sometimes to be able to separate the two?
Yeah.
I'm
you
working
know,
on that after having a talk. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's a useful tool, and just like anything else,
Mm.
if you use a tool the way it's meant to be used,
Yeah.
then it's helpful. But if you use it the wrong way, then it's not good
Yes.
for anybody. So I think that's the main thing, just to use it properly.
So, yeah. Well, do you know, I think that's probably quite a good note to end on, really.
Mhm.
It's a shame more people didn't join us, and the others who did come dropped out. But
Well,
I think
funny,
actually
I lost someone.
we've sort of covered the essence of the thing. If anybody wants to, a little bit of a guidance of how to cope with a dog that's scared of vacuum cleaner or hairdryer stuff, then, you know, they can have a listen to the recording. Okay,
Right.
if you're happy with that.
Yes, thank you.
Right.